Okay, so the I don't know. I guess it's kind of big news right now. Zach Buchanan actually announced earlier today that he's leaving the Cincinnati Enquirer, which that kind of means that I mean there's been a lot of actual like Reds writers movement during the offseason. We talked a little bit about it earlier this offseason. C. Trent Rosecrans left the Enquirer and he's now with the Athletic Cincinnati. But they also are now losing Zach Buchanan at the Enquirer. And unlike C. Trent, he is not going to be continuing to cover the Reds. Or at least that's the way I read his tweet. He said his last day at the Enquirer is today. It's also the last day that he's going to be covering the Reds. So I would assume he's getting another job somewhere else. Where that is, what job that is, we don't really know yet. He said he'll have an announcement next week. That just leaves John Fay at the Cincinnati Enquirer. He took over what was his old job from Trent when Trent left for the Athletic. So if you're a writer and you would like to cover the Reds and have experience in journalism of some kind, the job is posted at the Enquirer, so throw your application in. I made a joke on Twitter that I was going to apply. I don't think I'm going to apply. One, I don't fly, so that pretty much eliminates me from, covering the Major League Baseball team at all because you have to fly to cover some of these cities, and I just can't do it because I'm a crazy person. But it's interesting to see the crazy amount of movement in the Reds writer sphere, so to speak, during the offseason. I joked earlier that there's been more writing moves covering the Cincinnati Reds than the Reds have actually made free agent moves this offseason. And I think that it's actually now 4 Reds writer moves to 2 free agent signings for the Reds. But I don't know. It's just one of those funny things to me. All right. So when it comes to what's going on in the game today, first game, we're probably going to run through 7 or 8 pitchers. Sal Romano's on the mound right now. I can't remember who all is supposed to follow him. I believe that Tyler Mahle is the other starting pitcher that's scheduled to go today, and then there's just going to be a plethora of bullpen guys after that. What's interesting to me is that they're going to, the backups for the game today is we're going to see Jose Siri taking over in center field when Billy Hamilton leaves the game, which I'm excited to see. He had a pretty good offseason in the Dominican Winter League. Got out to a slow start. I don't want to say a slow start. He just wasn't playing much early on in the Dominican Winter League, mostly being used as a pinch hitter, or not a pinch hitter, a pinch runner. He did well on the bases, but about mid-November or so, he started to get regular playing time or semi-regular playing time as the center fielder for his team, and really started hitting well at that point. Carried it through the playoffs. I didn't check once his team was eliminated from the playoffs, but at one point he was leading the playoffs in home runs. So, huge year last year in Dayton. Good off season in the Dominican Winter League. I'm excited to see what he can do. It's spring training, doesn't really matter, but he's probably the big prospect name to watch in the game today. Not going to see. It doesn't seem like we're going to see Nick Senzel play today at shortstop. The backup is Cliff Pennington today. Now, how long each one of the starters play and how long the backups play, I don't know. Trent just kind of tweeted out what was the starting lineup and then the backups behind that. So, if guys get one or two at bats each, that might get them to the end of the game. It might not. It just all depends. What else do we got for today? Well, I just checked Twitter, and it seems that Red's Twitter is not missed a beat. Mark Sheldon just tweeted out where somebody sent something to him, and here we go with Billy's fly ball nonsense. I'm not gonna lie, I don't think it's a good idea to bat Billy Hamilton leadoff for the Reds. I feel like a lot of us feel that way. He just doesn't get on base enough. But at the same time, it's the first game of spring training. Brian Price said before the game today, according to all the beat writers, that Billy Hamilton does not have the leadoff spot locked up. Jesse Winker is also going to have an opportunity to win that job when he's in the lineup. I think that it's fairly clear to me that Jesse Winker is a much better option for leadoff than than Billy Hamilton is, but I don't make the lineup. That's Trent's job. I'm just kidding. It's not Trent's job, although it seems like everybody seems to think that it's his job. But I don't know. Brian Price made a weird comment today, that the lineup is far from set at this point. And that's just weird to me because going into 2018, the only real addition to the lineup is going to be Jesse Winker. You know what you've got from the other 7 guys. Like, what changes are you expecting to come from guys in this lineup? I just don't know. It doesn't really make sense that the lineup isn't pretty much set in his head right now. I mean, you're really going to change the lineup around based on, 40 spring training at bats? I don't know. That's just a weird one to me, but I don't know. It's not my job to make the lineup either, but it just seems that rational thinking would say that you kind of know what you're going to get out of the guys that are in the lineup outside of Jesse Winker and maybe Jose Peraza because they're both so young at this point. But, you've got quite a good amount of information on what Jose Peraza is or isn't. Until he proves otherwise, you should probably treat him pretty much like he was, or he's going to be the guy that he was last year. I don't think that any amount of improvements in spring training should change that because, again, one, what's the competition level? Who's he facing? How were those guys pitching that day? What were they working on that day? If the guy's coming out and throwing, 20 straight fastballs, that's a lot different than a guy trying to attack a hitter and get him out rather than just getting in his work. And that's one of the things that comes with spring training is you just don't. That's why I hate the stats in spring. You just don't really know what you're getting from. I mean, even inning to inning, the competition level is just kind of all over the place. So, I don't know. It's we're 21 minutes into spring training and I'm already complaining about Brian Price and his decision making. It's been a long off season, guys. It really has. It's good to have baseball back, and I'm glad that I'll be able to watch it. But I think that the reason we all complain is we want the best for the Reds. We really do. We want to see them win. We want to see them, have success, and we've all got our opinions and ideas on what'll make that happen. But I don't know. Maybe I should just shut up and maybe not shut up since I'm sitting here talking to everybody live, but at least back off of the manager critiques right now. Yeah. Got a comment if Billy needs a Gold Glove. I mean, he does and he doesn't. I'm not going to say he doesn't deserve one because I think that he probably is, if not the best center fielder in baseball, he's right there. But the Gold Glove doesn't actually mean anything in terms of who is or isn't the best. I mean, it doesn't change anything. It'd be nice to have. I'm not gonna if I were to get some award that said that I was the best. Yeah, I'd like that too. But I don't think that actually changes anything. He doesn't get an extra bonus, I don't think, for winning a Gold Glove. If he does, then yes, he needs one because I'm all about the guys getting more money than they're getting right now. But I mean, I think that we all can agree that he's one of the elite. Yeah, I know words. He's one of the elite fielders in baseball. So, that recognition. I mean, I'm sure that's nice, but it doesn't change a whole lot with things. So we shall see. And my other monitor went off. Let me fix that real quick just so I can monitor some things. Okay. Alright, so what else do we got? I mean, do you guys have any questions? There's a handful of you guys watching right now, so I'm sure that a lot of people are at work listening to the game on the radio, if they're lucky enough. But if anybody has any questions, just throw them in there and I'll get to them. Otherwise, I'm just going to sit around and talk about, crazy, weird Reds minor league things. An interesting signing that the Reds had this past week was Tony Sanchez, former Pirates. I think he was the number 4 overall pick. He's a catcher. He got a minor league deal with the Reds. He's not in big league camp, but he just adds some more depth to the depth chart for backup catchers. I think that you never really have enough catching. Catching is so tough to come by. I'd expect him to. Yeah, AAA looks pretty stacked right now as far as catching goes. They've got Stuart Turner's there. I mean, maybe Tony Sanchez is going to be there. Um, oh gosh, they brought in another guy who actually is in big league camp, but I can't think of his name right now behind the plate. But that's three guys that right now seem like they're lined up for that AAA spot. Maybe one of those guys goes back to AA in platoons with Joe Hudson. Maybe we'll kind of have to see how things work out there. But I don't know, maybe it's a situation where they just need to replace a guy like Chad Wallach that they lost last year on waivers to the Marlins. But now, the one thing that I'm sure you read about on the site earlier this week is that the Reds traded international cap space to the Rangers for a young right-handed pitcher. Now, here's what I liked about this deal the most, is that the Reds kind of went in a different direction than you see teams go when they make trades a lot. They went into it. They really went down deep into the Texas Rangers farm system. They picked up Miguel Medrano, who I really hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. I may not be, but he's never pitched in the United States before. He spent 2 seasons in the Dominican Summer League. Now, the first year that he was there, he barely pitched. But the second year, I mean, he was absolutely dominant. 59 innings, 2.59 ERA. He walked 7 guys. He struck out 61 batters. Now, numbers in this league, I mean, there's been studies that have shown that, performance in that league doesn't mean much of anything as far as things go. And Cleveland just hit a long solo home run. But, the numbers in this league, they don't necessarily suggest success or failure when you move up in the organization. And the reason is the guys that are generally in this league, they're unrefined, very young. I mean, they're almost all teenagers. So there's a lot of growth that can happen between when they're in this kind of league. This is such a developmental league. Most of these guys are basically high school age. So while you always want to see better numbers, they don't necessarily mean that it's good or bad, no matter how the numbers look. But he definitely had good numbers. I was able to track down a scouting report on him. I reached out to a few contacts, and he's a 3-pitch guy, 90 to 94 last year. Very good command on that pitch. Good changeup, has a chance to be an above-average offering. He's also got a curveball, but that's kind of it's below average right now. It's one that he's still working on, but every so often he'll show a really good curveball. So there's a potential for it to be a good pitch in the future as well. But what I really like the fact that the Reds didn't just take some random organizational guy that was in A-ball that'll wind up being their backup shortstop in Dayton or something this year. You don't see teams too often go to the Dominican Summer League, or even the complex levels here in the United States. Like the Reds have the Arizona League Reds, the teams that have spring training in Florida, they've got the Gulf Coast League, whatever team it happens to be. Teams don't trade for or trade those players in general too often, and I don't understand why. I've talked with a lot of people about this before that are, scouts that are working around baseball, and even other writers. A lot of teams don't really do scouting during the short season leagues. Got the Billings, Arizona League Reds, the soon-to-be Greenville Reds. Like, a lot of teams don't really send their scouts to scout other organizational talent in those leagues. I don't really know why. What I've been told is that they've seen a lot of these guys recently. A lot of guys that do play in these leagues come from the most recent draft, and so the Reds. We'll use the Reds as an example. They've scouted a lot of these guys in the spring, so they kind of have a general idea. But there's still a lot of guys that are, they're out there that are from international guys that were drafted the year before, especially high school guys, and they're at ages in their teens that they take really big strides in short periods of time. Like the scouting report that was from 4 months ago, when maybe you saw a guy in spring training, that's really old information for a 19, 20-year-old kid. It really is. So that's always one of those weird things that I never really got. And yeah, you can see them in spring training, and then you can see them in instructional league, and it's a lot easier. It's definitely a lot cheaper because those things all happen in one generally confined area. So you're not paying to fly a guy around the country to hit up 5, 6, 7 different spots. But I don't know. I think that it's a place where you would like to probably see more scouting, in my opinion. I think that there's an inefficiency there. I really do. I think that a team that really focuses on that more, and if they can make trades and pick up guys that maybe undervalued a little bit, that's something that would be very beneficial. So I really like this move from the Reds, even if it doesn't turn out to be anything in the long run. I like the creativity. I like the thought process behind going after a guy like that. So, got a question in the chat from Cole. How would Lorenzen justify himself getting into that starting five? I mean, realistically, I think that if Brian Price named his 8 guys that are going to be in the starting rotation battle, and realistically, it sounds like it's going to come down to 4 guys battling for that number 5 spot. Sal Romano, who's on the mound right now, Robert Stevenson, and then the next tier would be Michael Lorenzen and Tyler Mahle. I think that if we're going to be realistic, Michael Lorenzen's the number 8 guy on that chart right now. He didn't start last year. He didn't really start the year before. And I mean, I think that he has zero room for error. He's got to come out as a starting pitcher in spring training and dominate from pitch 1 through the entire spring. And I think that he'll probably have to outperform, maybe even significantly outperform the other 3 guys if he's going to get the nod. I really do. I think that, given his track record with not starting over the past 2 seasons, he's just behind the 8 ball from the other guys. So I think that that's probably going to be a tough road for him. I'm not saying it's impossible. Michael Lorenzen has really good stuff. I think that he's a different pitcher now than he was when he started his rookie season. I think that adding that cutting fastball was a big thing for him. I think that it gave him that just a different look. But at the same time, I think that it's very unlikely that he's going to win this spot in the rotation. I think that it's basically lip service because the Reds know that he does want to start. But I think that generally speaking, they view him as a relief pitcher, and they're just giving this opportunity because it's unlikely he's going to win it. It just is. So it's a way to appease his thoughts a little bit, but at the same time, it's not very likely that they have to go through with the situation that they really don't want to and give him the job, because the other guys that are up there for competition, they're also good options. So if any of them perform well, you can also, you can reasonably tell Michael Lorenzen, hey, we liked what you did, but we're going to go with, so-and-so because they performed this way. And it's a justifiable reason. So that's just my take on it. But I don't think that I'm too wrong on that one. Okay, got another question. Do you think Nick Senzel is capable of playing shortstop every day at the major league level? I really don't know. If I'm to be perfectly honest, I'd say no. And the reason I say that is because pretty much everybody I've talked to didn't think that he was really a good second baseman coming out of college. Now, that's not to say that everybody thought that, and you've even heard a few people say that they thought that he could be a shortstop as a professional. But the overwhelming majority say no, or said no. I guess I shouldn't say no. I haven't asked anybody about it since the Reds seem to have really decided that this was something they were going to give a look at. Nick is very athletic. He's a really hard worker. I don't put anything behind or against him with that. I think that he'll do everything he can to make that work. But shortstop's the toughest position on the infield to play. And usually you don't see guys make that transition. Now, that's not to say it isn't impossible or it's not possible. There are guys who have slid over from second base and third base to play shortstop. And size-wise, Nick definitely isn't a guy who is, quote-unquote, too big to play shortstop. He's 6'1", 205. That's definitely within the range of, your average or, not shortstop. And Tucker Barnhart just hit a 2-run home run. So, awesome to see. But, yeah, I'd say it's unlikely, but definitely not impossible to see Nick being a shortstop. But I think that if he is going to play shortstop, it's going to be one of those things where you're definitely going to be giving up some defense for offense. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that Nick is going to hit, and he's going to hit a lot. The question is, how much defense are you going to be giving up for the offense? And, there's a line to where you're giving up too much defense, no matter how much offense you're asking to get back. with that said, I I really don't think that he would be as bad. Um, if he's, let's say, he can't be the worst defensive shortstop in baseball. That's too much defense to give up. But let's just say he's the 20th best defensive shortstop among the starters. If he can be that, then I think that you have a really strong argument that he should be the starting shortstop. And unless Jose Peraza comes out and he's just a completely different hitter than he's expected to be, that would change things up a little bit. But if, say, Nick Senzel's a negative 10 run defender over the course of a season at shortstop, well, he's going to make up that and more with his bat versus what Jose Peraza is going to give you. So I think that there's some wiggle room there. I'm glad that the Reds are trying it. We've heard the Reds talk about some of these ideas in the past with Aroldis Chapman going back to the rotation, Raisel Iglesias being a starter. Now Iglesias didn't work out because of the shoulder injury, so I don't necessarily blame them for that. But we never saw the Reds realistically give a shot to Chapman as a starter. Now, I mean, they looked at it a few times in spring training, but you could read into everything that Dusty Baker was saying that he did not want to do that, and I don't know if there was internal arguments about what was going on or not, but he definitely won those if there were. So, I'm glad they're going to try it. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Unfortunately, we're not going to see it today. The game is on Sunday. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to see Nick play some shortstop on Sunday. We'll get a better idea of what's going on. But, yeah, so. Okay, so we've got another question. What's the plan if Senzel or Peraza can't handle the position, given they don't have anybody else being close to a major league caliber shortstop? Yeah, I don't know if neither one of those guys can handle shortstop. I mean, Cliff Pennington seems to be the backup right now, but I mean, are you really going to play Cliff Pennington as your starting shortstop if there's not an injury? I don't think so. I think that if Senzel can't handle shortstop defensively, they're going to stick with Jose Peraza until there's another viable option somewhere. At least during this season. I think that if it's if he hits like he did last year, they'll go into the off season looking to pick up a shortstop. But if Senzel can't be that guy and Peraza shows some offensive improvement, then he's the guy. Right now looking at the depth chart, you've got Blake Traha, who he was in Double-A last year, but he didn't hit at all. You've got Alfredo Rodriguez, who's in Dayton. Outstanding defender, but didn't hit at all last year. Now, he did have a knee injury that he played through a little bit. That may explain some of it, but he's never hit anywhere. And I think that expecting him to make big strides at the plate, I mean, that's probably unrealistic. I'm hopeful that he can. I want him to, but I think that that's a big ask, in my opinion. I mean, it's when you really start to think about the shortstop depth in the organization, and I wrote about it on RedsMinorLeagues.com earlier this week, or was it last week? Sometime in the last week and a half. All of the guys that you can foresee as possible starting shortstops in the majors, they played last year in rookie ball, so they're all still, at the very best, 2-3 years away from being at the major league level, and that's if everything goes right. They don't have any stumbling blocks along the way to get over. So it's a weird situation for the Reds, which again, I think that's another good reason the Reds are trying this whole Nick Senzel at shortstop thing. I mean, if it doesn't work, there's really no harm that it didn't work. But if it does, it solves a lot of problems in the organization, both at the major league level and the minor league level, because it's going to buy you time to get another shortstop ready, hopefully, before Suarez moves on in free agency, or maybe they can re-sign him. I don't think that's likely, but if Suarez does leave it, in 3 years, you can slide Senzel over to third base, and maybe at that point you've got a different shortstop who's ready to come into the game. Let's see, and yeah, so now we've got Tyler Mahle on the mound for the Reds. He took over for Sal Romano, who gave up 1 run in his 2 innings. I think that as Brian Price said, he's got the different tiers for the pitchers. I think that Tyler Mahle coming into spring training is number 7. On the list as far as the depth chart goes, but it wouldn't surprise me if he won the number 5 spot. The guy, he just pounds the strike zone. He's got good stuff. I don't think it's quite as good as what Sal's got or what Stevenson's got, but he pitches very well. So It wouldn't surprise me at all if he got the job, especially if the other two guys stumble at all. But I think going in right now, he's probably number 7, and he will have to outperform the other two guys ahead of him to get that spot. Let's see. Can Taylor Trammell rocket through AAA this season and be ready for the majors by June of next year? I don't think he's going to get to AAA this year. He's gonna head to Daytona. Let me fix this computer real quick. He's gonna head to Daytona to start the year. If he has a big first half, they'll promote him to Pensacola. I mean, look at what Nick Senzel did last year between Daytona and Pensacola. They didn't promote him to AAA, and for as good and as advanced as Taylor Trammell is, he's not as advanced as Nick Senzel was last year. So I don't think he's going to reach AAA this year. I think that if he has a big season, he'll finish out in AA next year, and then depending on how things go, maybe he can start next year in AAA. But I don't know. I think that's a very aggressive timetable for him. I mean, that would put him in the major leagues, at 21 years old. And well, I don't think it's unreasonable, unrealistic. I think it's unlikely. I really like what Taylor Trammell brings to the table. He's got some speed. He can play defense. He can hit. He's going to provide plenty of value on the bases. But that's a pretty quick rise for just about anybody. So I'm going to say no on that one. I think that sometime in, 2 years is more realistic. So I don't know, sometime in mid to late 2020 is a better timetable for when Taylor Trammell could be ready and knocking on the door for the major leagues. Let's see. We've got Aquino had a bad season last year in AA because of his plate approach. Will Siri struggle when he gets to AA because of a similar approach? I think that's one of the bigger questions. They both are more aggressive type hitters. They both kind of fit that mold where they definitely took strides in terms of their pitch recognition. And I think that's more of the issue than an aggressive approach, is just that being able to identify that pitch just a fraction sooner will help them lay off of it. But I think that both of those guys made strides at different times in their careers. But one thing that Jose Siri's got that Aquino does not have is his bat control. How do I want to say this? He is able to hit pitches that Aristides Aquino can't. He can be fooled a little bit more, but still get the bat on the ball and do damage. I think that helps him out a little bit too. And then there's the other fact that he doesn't need to hit as well as Aristides Aquino does, because he's going to provide way more value on the bases and way more in the field because he's a center fielder, and he's a very, very good center fielder too. And so that gives him a lot of wiggle room in terms of how much his bat can go backwards than where Aquino has. Now, he's going to have to hit better than Aquino did in AA for sure, because Aquino, he showed plenty of power, but didn't hit for any average whatsoever, low on base percentage because he didn't walk. So I think that we're definitely going to have to see a better line from Siri than we would from Aquino, or than we did from Aquino this past season. But I think that the concerns that he may have problems with AA pitching they're real right now, and we're probably not going to find that out until probably mid-season this year. But at the same time, I think that there are things that we need to watch for on that same front when he starts facing pitchers in 2 months in Daytona, because the pitchers are going to be better there, and there's going to be guys that can control everything a little bit better along the way. And so, can he lay off that slider? And I think that's the biggest pitch that is an issue with him. I think that he handles curveballs well enough. He definitely can hit fastballs. Changeups don't get him too much. It's that low and away slider that gets him a little bit. And I really liked what I saw from him over the past year in terms of laying off of that pitch. Now he definitely had some struggles with it at times, but you could see where he got it sometimes. So hopefully that's another step forward that he can take this year and kind of build upon that. But I do think that it's a concern that we're all going to need to kind of keep an eye on as things go forward with Siri, because it's definitely something that, he would definitely not be the first guy that would, go to a level where just guys that could place that pitch give him fits. the same time, because of his defense and his base running, the bar is much lower. So we'll kind of have to play that one by ear. But yes, I think that there is a reason of concern as he moves up the ladder for his pitch recognition / plate discipline, whatever you want to call it. So, all right. I think that's all the questions that are in the chat for right now. I'm checking on Twitter to see if anybody's doing anything. Does not look like it. So, Tyler Malley got through his inning unscathed as far as runs go. It looked like there was an error in the first batter of the inning, but he got through that without giving anything up, so that was good. Oh gosh, another question: who's going to lead the Reds minor league in home runs this year? I have no idea. I mean, you look at the guys that have the biggest power, and I mean it's a guy like Aquino, a guy like Siri, but they're both playing in less hitter-friendly environments, or will be. Pensacola, I mean, last year it was a little bit hitter-friendly, but in the past couple of years it hasn't been. So that may or may not help Aquino. The Florida State League, where Siri's going to be playing, it's pretty much the most pitcher-friendly league in baseball. Outside of Daytona, all the other parks are spring training facilities, big parks. The ball doesn't travel well there. It does travel well in Daytona. They've got a short fence into both fields. Now the fence is a little bit taller out in right field than it is in left field, but I mean, don't get me wrong, Siri uses the whole field, but he's definitely going to pull the ball a little bit more often, and the wall's a little bit shorter there too. So I don't know. I'll take Aquino just because I think that the in-game power right now it's a little bit better, but neither one of those guys would surprise me. Trying to think if there's anybody else that I really feel would be a contender for this. No, I think I'd probably go with one of those two guys. So, Joey 6S, who is the minor leaguer we should love? I mean, you should love them all, but I'll say Taylor Trammell. The guy is, I mean, he's talented on the field, but I love Taylor off the field too. He's incredibly nice. He's funny. He's a thinker. Like I'm not saying the other guys aren't very thoughtful, but what stands out to me when I talk with Taylor is just the amount of thought that he puts into the answers when guys ask him questions. It's not something you see from guys that are 19, 20 years old too often. So I'll go with Taylor Trammell, although I think there's a lot of guys that are in the organization that everybody should love, but he's the guy that kind of jumps out to me the most. We've got Joey Votto at the plate, so let's all just enjoy this for a second. I'm going to grab a drink real quick. Yeah, Frisch's, good job. I love you guys. I thought I was going to be mad when you switched over from Coke products to Pepsi products, but I'm not going to lie. I really like Mountain Dew, so it's not quite Coke, but it hits the spot sometimes, and right now is one of those times. Alright, we've got another question in the chat, which I'm glad, guys. It just keep filling up the chat with questions because it makes this job a lot easier for me. I can just kind of follow along and see what happens here. But I don't know if this is Jap Vlogs or JAP Vlogs, but he asks, do I project Dilson Herrera to make the Major League team? Yes, absolutely. He's out of options, so if he doesn't make the Major League team, the Reds are going to have to put him on waivers or trade him. I don't think that they want to do either one of those things. He was the big part that came back in the Jay Bruce trade. And he hasn't really been healthy with the Reds since then, unfortunately. And he had off-season shoulder surgery. He's ready to go. He's playing in the game today. He's a designated hitter. Brian Price said earlier today that he's going to be playing second base tomorrow in the actual lineup. So he's healthy and ready to go. He's always hit when he's been healthy. I just think that it's going to be a tough sell for the Reds to not give him a spot on the roster. I mean, you basically have to be giving up on him at this point. And I think that with the talent that he's shown in the past, and rightly or wrongly, the team has stuff invested in him that, you can put him on the bench rather than just kind of giving him away at this point. I don't think that he's got too much of a shot to take the starting job from Scooter Gennett in spring training. Now, if Scooter gets hurt, then yeah, you could see a situation arise where, maybe Alex Blandino and Dilson Herrera are fighting for the second base job to start the year. But I think that right now he's playing for a utility spot. And the good news is he's actually been working on both shortstop and third base, and I don't think he's going to be an option for either one of those as far as the starting guy goes. But as a utility player, I don't think that that's out of the realm of possibility for Dilson Herrera, and that would definitely help him, secure a spot as a utility player on the roster. So I'd say the odds are very unlikely that he does not make the team. Not impossible, but I think that the team would be hard-pressed to decide that he doesn't deserve a spot on the roster, especially given where the team's at right now. They're still in the rebuild, and while they definitely want to be doing better in 2018, just letting him go at this point doesn't make a ton of sense given where the team is. Any thoughts on who the Reds will pick in the June draft? No, I have no idea. Things are so far from being determined right now. It's not funny. College guys just started playing. 95% of the high schools in the country aren't playing right now. It's a heavy pitching crop this year, especially in the top 10. I think there's only 2 position guys in the top 10 on Baseball America's top 100 list right now. One of the guys plays second base. Now there's some thought out there that maybe he could play shortstop, but if he can't play shortstop, does it really make? I'm always a guy who says take the best player available. But it would be surprising if the Reds took a second baseman, unless they felt he could play somewhere else, because it's not exactly like the Reds are hurting for second baseman right now. It seems like they've got prospects up and down the farm system at second that can play second base. They've already got multiple options at the major league level that can play second base. So it's definitely too early for that one. Let's see. Will Alex Blandino be a quality major leaguer? I believe he'll be a great utility guy. I think that he's probably more likely a utility guy like you. I think that he can play that position very well. He's not great defensively at shortstop. I would not like to see him play there every day. As a utility shortstop, I think that he's plenty enough capable to do that. He's got the ability to play third base defensively. Again, not a guy I don't think his bat's good enough to start there every day. But he gets on base. He's got a little bit of pop. He can play third. He can play second. He can play shortstop. He's athletic enough to play the outfield, although he's never played out there, I don't believe. So I think utility guy is a very good role for Blandino. Now, you never know how a guy's going to be able to adapt to that until they actually do. Being a utility player in the major leagues is not like being a utility player in the minor leagues. In the minor leagues, a utility guy, he may start 4 or 5 times a week just at different positions, just working his way around the field. In the major leagues, you don't really see that. You'll be a guy who might get 1 start a week and then be a pinch hitter the rest of the time. And you don't really know how guys are going to adapt to that pinch hitting role, where they'll get 5 at-bats a week, 6 at-bats a week, until they do it. Some guys can adapt to it very well. Some guys that were good hitters in the minor leagues, they cannot do that. They need those constant game repetitions in order to be the quality of hitter that they were. And they just can't make that adjustment to getting, to see a live pitching, so to speak, twice every 3 or 4 days. Like that, it's just not something everybody can do. But I think from a skills perspective, yes, Alex Blandino fits that, good utility guy role more so than, a starting everyday player. Do you see the Reds dealing Scooter Gennett if Herrera or Peraza play well? I don't think Peraza has a ton to do with Scooter Gennett, unless the idea is that Nick Senzel is also playing shortstop well, and then maybe you can make that move. But if you're going to do that, you might as well just put Senzel at second base, because I do think that it's very likely that Peraza is a better shortstop defensively than Nick Senzel is. But no, I don't think so. It's a situation where if he has another really good season, maybe at the deadline, a team needs a second baseman, you can make that trade. But I think that right now the value of Scooter Gennett probably isn't as high as we would like to think it is. he had a breakout year that was mostly built around power, in a year where pretty much everybody acknowledges, except for Rob Manfred, that the baseball was juiced. He keeps coming out and saying, it was well within the limits of the quality control. But there have been studies done and shown that being within the limits means that the baseball can travel like 20 extra feet versus a baseball that's just a normal baseball. Well, 20 feet is a long, long way. I mean, that's between a wall scraper home run and a ball that lands 7 rows deep. So, being within the limits of a regulation baseball, while technically what he's saying is true, that doesn't mean the baseball is not juiced. So, I think that everybody acknowledges that the baseball was juiced, and guys that had breakouts that were mostly based around power last year, teams are going to be skeptical, and I think that rightfully so. And Scooter Gennett falls into that category. Now, at the same time, Scooter Gennett is also at the age where a lot of guys tend to break out power-wise, juice baseball or not. And so, if he goes out and he has another season like he did last year, maybe it is a situation where the Reds can, make a trade and bring in one of the younger guys to take over the starting spot. But I don't think that's going to be something that happens before, June or July at the earliest. I just don't see where a team would be willing to give up the kind of value that I feel the Reds would need in order to make that kind of move. Any update on Gavin LaValley? I'm not sure really what kind of update you want. He finished last year healthy. He struggled in the second half with Pensacola, but first go around in Double-A in a tougher ballpark to hit in for the most part. Not really a big deal. I think that he'll go back to Double-A to start the year, and he's going to have to improve on what he did. No doubt about that. But I like the power with Gavin. I think he's going to need to improve his plate approach a little bit more, but he's still a young guy, and fortunately, and also unfortunately for him, he plays first base in the Reds organization. So that means, one, he's got time, because there's no need to rush him along because they have Joey Votto. At the same time, well, the Reds have Joey Votto, so is there really going to be a spot for him to play one day before he's a free agent? Probably not. So now that's not to say somebody wouldn't be interested in bringing him in via trade if he performs well, but it's a weird situation because Gavin LaValley is a good prospect. He is, but how useful is he to the Reds as far as being a future Reds player? I'm not sure because Joey Votto is not going anywhere for a long time, and by the time he's ready to go, Gavin LaValley will be on to another organization if they keep him in. His defensive flexibility is not really there, so it'd be tough to find a spot for him on the bench, so to speak. So I don't know. That's my take on Gavin LaValley. All right, another question. What are the Cincinnati Reds missing at the major league level that they will need to look at outside of the organization to fill? Are all the pieces somewhere in the organization? I think offensively, outside of shortstop, if Nick Senzel can't play there, can be found within the organization. Now, they probably can't be found this year. I think that shortstop, shortstop too, but center field is a spot where the guys that you feel could be difference makers, or even just regular starting players, they're still a few years away. I think that, a guy like Jose Siri, Taylor Trammell, Stuart Fairchild, maybe even a guy like TJ Friedl, they're still several years away from being major league ready. Billy Hamilton is great defensively. We talked about that at the start, but if he's not going to hit, I don't know. It's a tough sell for me. I think there's a bare minimum you got to hit, and I'm not sure that Billy Hamilton is there. Right now it makes sense because there's not really another option. But one day there is going to be another. Well, let me rephrase that. There's always another option. You can trade for guys, you can sign guys, but at least in the organization right now, there's not another option to play center field right now. It would seem. I personally would like to see Phillip Ervin get some chances out there, but for whatever reason, the Reds don't seem sold that he can handle center field. He's not the greatest defensive center fielder, but he's very fast. He's got good speed that helps him make up for things along the way. And especially in Cincinnati, where the ballpark is smaller, I think you can give up a little bit of range for a bat. So I'd be interested to see that happen. I'm not saying give him the starting job, but mix and match him a little bit with Billy Hamilton wouldn't be the worst thing that ever happened. But it doesn't seem the Reds are too interested in that aspect. I think everything else can be found internally. You look around the starting 8. I mean, corner outfield. I mean, you've got Jesse Winker coming up this year. You've got Schebler, Duvall. I mean, they're flawed players, but they're not bad players. They're major leaguers. I think that they've each got their own different strengths and weaknesses, but I think that they're both quality major leaguers. They're not guys that are going to be above average all-star types, but they're not going to hurt you either. First base is taken care of. Second base, you've got so many options. Third base, you've got Suarez locked up. You've got Senzel as a backup there if you needed it. Behind the plate, Tucker Barnhart, Gold Glover, solid bat. Behind him, you don't know what you're going to get with Devin Mesoraco. It's been forever, so to speak, since he's been healthy and able to play. But you've got your starter locked up, and then if you look down in the minors, by the time Tucker Barnhart's contract is up, hopefully Tyler Stevens is going to be ready. You've got Chris Oakey, who's got upside, but definitely needs to take strides forward versus what he did last year. Pitching wise, you've got options. Now there are a lot of questionable options that have a lot to prove still, but it's not like they don't have guys that have the potential to be what you need them to be. They just kind of need to actually go out there and do it. And they're probably not all going to do it. If they do, that'd be great. The Reds are going to go, 120 and 42. But I think that they've got enough arms that you could see where they could get all the answers internally. So I think that really it's just kind of a shortstop center field situation where you may need to look outside the organization in the short term if you don't have the options internally. ETAs on Alfredo Rodriguez, Vladimir Gutierrez, and Jose Garcia. That's a really tough one when it comes to Alfredo Rodriguez because I'm not entirely sure how the organization sees him. Is he a guy that they don't really care how much he hits? Because if not, you might be able to see him next year. If they need him, or if they want him to be able to hit it all, it might not ever happen. Even as a true glove-only guy, there's a bare minimum you've got to hit. And if you're going to be a guy who's going to hit like that in the Florida State League as a 23-year-old, what's going to happen when you get to AAA? There's a lot of room and need for growth in his bat right now. So if they need him to hit, or they want him to hit, that changes his ETA by a lot. Vladimir Gutierrez, I think that at some point in 2019 wouldn't be unreasonable to expect. He's got the stuff. I think that he throws enough strikes that he's not going to be a guy who struggles, so to speak, as he moves up the ladder. Jose Garcia, I don't know. I have never seen him play in person. The amount of video I've seen is very limited. I will say this, the Reds are very high on him. They really like what they see, but going off of just what they say versus what I've seen, I hate doing that, especially with something like ETA. He's going to be 20 years old this year. He'll probably start the year in Dayton. 3 years from now, two years from now, if everything goes perfect for him. So, we're still talking, what is that? 2020, 2021 for Jose Garcia. So, I don't know. That's, like I said, that was a tough one because there's a lot of different things going on there. Is Jeter Downs the long-term solution at shortstop? Again, that's another tough one because there's a lot of people out there that they're not sure if he's going to be able to stick at shortstop or not. Right now, he's definitely a shortstop. The question is, as a teenager, is he going to outgrow the position? If he does, then no, he's definitely not going to be the long-term solution. If I had to put money on it right now, I would say no, just because the odds are that he's not going to be. There's already questions as a teenager as to if he's going to outgrow the spot or not. So if you're looking at it like that, no, I think that there's potential that he could be a very good shortstop too. I think he's always going to be a bat first kind of guy, but if he can be a solid or even just a slightly below average defender at shortstop, that bat's going to play pretty well there. And so, the potential's there, but there's a lot of other shortstop options that are kind of in that same area as him. You got, we just talked about, Jose Garcia's there. You got Miguel Hernandez, who's right below him, who I've heard outstanding things about his glove, and he hit pretty well last year too. So there's some talent in the bat. There's plenty of other options there for shortstop, though. If he starts to show that maybe he's not going to be the strongest defender at shortstop, they'll probably slide him over to second base or third base, kind of depending on how they feel his defense will translate with each position. But I think that for right now, we're going to see him at shortstop. What'll be interesting to see is I think that both he and Jose Garcia are going to be in Dayton this year. So how are they going to break down the playing time between shortstop and second base with those two guys? That'll be the more interesting thing for me to follow this year in Dayton. That's kind of what I'm looking forward to, assuming that I'm correct in my assumption that both of them are going to be in Dayton. Which minor league team are you excited to see this season? Which one will have the most talent? I think that Daytona is going to have the most talent. We saw that last year with Dayton. You'll have Tyler Stevenson behind the plate. Chris Oakey might be coming back too, so you can have a pretty potentially very good platoon kind of situation at catcher, and then obviously some of those guys they'll split some time at designated hit or two to get everybody their at bats. You'll have Jose Siri, you'll have T.J. Friedel, you'll have Taylor Trammell in the outfield. It's a pretty talented outfield there. So, and then on the mound you'll have Tony Santillan, who I really, really like this guy's stuff. It's among some of the best in the entire Reds organization. You put him in that league where fly balls go to die, and I think that he could put up some really, really interesting numbers this year. So I think that's probably going to be the most talented team. Unfortunately, be one that I'll see the least amount this year because they don't have the TV package in the Florida State League except for one team. And then I'll spend my week down there watching them play in person at some point. But the other teams I'll get to see a lot more, both between the travel and they've all got the TV packages throughout the league, so I'll see that. Let's see. Does Ryan Hendricks crack the MLB bullpen by 2019? I'm going to go with no. Because first, by 2019 means it's going to happen this season, and so I don't think that's going to happen. He finished last year, second half in Daytona. While he wasn't bad in Daytona, he wasn't exactly good either. He definitely needs to work on controlling the strike zone a little bit better. He's a guy that it wouldn't surprise me. He's a guy who's got absolutely incredible stuff. So if he goes out there and starts pounding the strike zone, he could definitely skyrocket through the system. He can be a very quick mover. But based on things that I saw last year, I think it's going to be quite a little bit slower of a rise through the system. There are definitely some things that he needs to work on before he's ready for the major leagues. So I'll go with no on 2019, or before 2019. Late 2019, early 2020, I think that's more realistic for him. But with that kind of stuff, if he comes out and he's made the adjustments and he throws strikes, he's a guy that could fly up through there real quick. Is Jimmy Herget going to make the team? I'm going to say no, but I think his odds are not that far off from yes. I think that when they had only signed Garrett Hughes and had yet to sign David Hernandez, his odds were better. But now it seems like there might only be one or two spots available in the bullpen. And I'm just not sure that he's going to get the nod. He's not a 40-man roster guy right now, and I think that plays against him a little bit. As a reliever, you're not too worried about starting his clock early. I don't think that's going to come into play. But the fact that he's not on the 40-man and other guys are means that maybe you don't need to burn an option on somebody right away. So I'm going to go with no, but it's a very soft no. I think he's got a 30 or 40% chance of making the team. Again, he's a guy that's got great stuff. He's had plenty of success in Double-A. He had success last year in Triple-A. I just think there's a lot of competition for the final spot or two in the bullpen. And, when push comes to shove, those options things, they come into play. They really do. And him not being on the 40 man, that also brings into play that you'd have to cut somebody to bring him up. Only with a half season in AAA under his belt, you can justifiably say, hey, we'd like to see a little bit more out of him in AAA. So I'm gonna go with no on that one. But again, soft no. Let's see. What will be the starting lineup and rotation after the trade deadline? I no idea. I think that it all depends on how the team plays. If they get out to a good start and they're winning ball games, that's going to be a lot different of the way the Reds approach the trade deadline. Rather than being sellers, maybe they're buyers, and that's a big dynamic shift. If the Reds are out there looking to add talent rather than subtract talent, or well, I don't want to say subtract talent, but move talent, that changes the game quite a bit. So it's pretty tough to kind of say what's going on there. Rotation wise, it all comes down to health. They've got a lot of different options, and if everybody stays healthy, I doubt there will be too much movement in the rotation around the deadline. But guys unfortunately get hurt, and as Reds fans, we've all seen that happen over the past year and a half. So, what is my phone is blowing up here? Okay, nothing important. I just need to check. A lot of baseball communications happen through the phone. So, Jackson Stevens is on the mound for the Reds now. He took over for Tyler Mahle, who took over for Sal Romano. But it also looks like some of the starters are coming out of the game. They just showed Joey Votto walking off with his duffel bag full of gear, stopping by the Indians dugout and talking to a few guys. I don't have the sound on, so I'm not entirely sure who is in and out of the game right now, but we'll find out here shortly. Let's see, got another question here. Thoughts on Jacob Heatherly? Reds third-round pick last year, left-hander, solid but unspectacular stuff. Big kid. I think that he could eat plenty of innings. Now, the one thing that a lot of scouts tend to agree on is there's not much projection left with this stuff. He's probably going to get a little bit better than he is right now. I think he'll be 20 years old this year. He was one of the older senior signs from high school last year, but there's not a ton of projection in his stuff. It's kind of what he is now is what he's going to be, and if he does make improvements, it's going to be based around mixing his pitches better, throwing more strikes, understanding sequencing, things like that, rather than picking up velocity on his fastball, tightening up his breaking ball, making improvements with his changeup, things like that. Those aren't things that are expected too much from Jacob Heatherly. So I like him as a prospect, but I think that he's one of those guys who may top out around somewhere in that 10 to 15 range on the prospect list, rather than a guy who could skyrocket up to the top of the list, because generally speaking, there aren't many people that think the stuff is going to improve too much from where it is right now. And right now, it's solid but unspectacular. All right, so looks like we've got Brandon Dixon at first base. I just saw. I did not see what else was going on the field, though. Whatever happened to Jonathan Crawford? Jonathan Crawford had shoulder surgery a couple years ago. Came back last year, did not look good. Stuff just it wasn't the same, and unfortunately, that's to be expected. They can fix elbows pretty well now. Most guys generally come back to the guy that they were before they had the injury. Shoulders, it's not like that. Most guys don't come back from shoulder surgery to be anything near what they used to be. And I think that, Jonathan Crawford, he's one of those guys. He falls into that category of, the stuff just isn't the same. He's still with the organization, but last year he walked more guys than he struck out, or if he didn't, it was really close, but then he hit a bunch of guys with pitches. And he definitely had more walks and hit by pitches than he had strikeouts last year. So control was definitely a problem for him. The stuff wasn't nearly as good as it was in the past before he got hurt. You hope for the best, but I think that at this point, I wouldn't expect too much out of him, unfortunately. Does Ariel Hernandez make the bullpen this year? When he's on, his stuff is absolutely electric. Yeah. I think we're definitely going to see him in the bullpen at some point this year. I'm not sure if we're going to see him in the bullpen in April this year. If he has a good spring training and he can throw strikes, then yes, they're going to put him in the bullpen this year out of spring training because, I mean, he's got the best stuff of anybody on the team. But, if you're going to walk a guy an inning, then that's a tough sell. You just can't do that in the major leagues. I mean, you can't really do it in the minor leagues either. And that's kind of what he did last year. He pretty much walked one guy every inning that he pitched in the major leagues last year, and that's just that control's not going to work. You've got to do better than that, and so I'm going to go with no for early in the season. I think that we'll eventually see him at some point during the year if he can throw strikes. I mean, he doesn't even need to be a guy that pounds the strike zone with every pitch, but he's going to need to be a guy who can walk under 5 batters per 9 innings. And if he can't do that, he's going to be a guy who's going to go back and forth between AAA and the major leagues. If he can improve upon that, then you're looking at a guy who can pitch in the 7th inning. Because while the walks, I mean, they're probably always going to be high for Ariel Hernandez, but if they're only moderately high, then he definitely is a guy you can put in your major league bullpen because he's going to miss bats, he's going to reduce weak contact because that stuff's just off the charts. Jackson Stevens is done with his first inning of work. I don't know if he's going to get any more innings than that, but looks like he struck out 2 batters that inning. So let's check in on Twitter. Do we have anything else going on? Yes, I know you like that little dun-dun-dun-dun. I do that when I'm reading and scrolling. I'm weird. Actually, I have a question on Twitter, which I don't know if it's just a general question or if it was replying to my whole thing or not. But between Duvall and Schebler, who do you think performs better? I'm going to go with Schebler. I think that outside of the month of, I think it was July last year, when he stubbornly played through an injury without telling anybody, he was definitely the better player between the two. He hit significantly better, and the defensive metrics don't exactly like Scott Schebler in right field, but I think that he's a fine right fielder. I don't think he's an outstanding right fielder, but I think the defensive metrics don't really line up exactly with what my eyes see. No, your eyes do lie to you. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. I've definitely seen situations where my eyes have lied to me before, so take that for what it's worth. But I think that if Scott Schebler plays to his ability and doesn't decide to play for a month with a hidden injury and not tell anybody, that he's going to be the better performer between the two. I just think that he's a little bit better of a hitter. Power's a little bit less, but not by much. But he draws walks, and that's something that Adam Duvall doesn't do. So I'm a guy who believes in on-base percentage, and, well, the rest of you should believe in on-base percentage too. But I just think that the offensive upside is a little bit stronger for him than it is for Adam Duvall. So that's my take. And back on the Reds game, it looks like all of the starters are now leaving the field. There are probably 20 guys on the screen walking across the outfield right now to get back to the clubhouse. So let's see. Do you think Hunter Greene starts in Dayton? I definitely think that he starts in Dayton, and you kind of alluded to it a little bit. Is he going to stay back in extended spring training? That's the big question. Personally, I would say that I'd keep him back in spring training, or if nothing else, if you're going to send him to Dayton, don't let him pitch in April. There's a lot of reasons for that. The cold weather in the Midwest League in April, it's not good. And I hate saying this, but because all of these guys are taking that same risk throwing in the cold weather, but the Reds just have more invested in Hunter Greene than they do any of these other guys. And rightly or wrongly, fairly or unfairly, that's the reality of the situation. They're going to treat him a little bit differently than they treat just about anybody else. So I think they're going to want to be careful with him for that reason. And then there's also the reason that he's going to be 19 years old, or 18 years old all of next year, or this year. I keep saying next year like the baseball season isn't right around the corner. But you're going to want to control his innings. I don't think they're even going to let him throw 100 innings this year. So if you, Jose Siri buzz, fastball right over his head. If you bring Hunter Greene up and say, let him start pitching on May 15th, you can pretty much let him pitch the entire way through the season. And rather than shutting him down at any point, you just, maybe every other start he only gets to go, 4 innings and 80 pitches instead of, throwing 5 innings and 100 pitches or whatever the number is. You can kind of control it a little bit like that and let him pitch the entire way through the season rather than shutting him down. So personally, I'd be surprised if you were up in Dayton playing, that first week of April when they start things. Now, Hunter Greene has said on Twitter that he's going to try and talk to the Reds, and he said he wants to be with his teammates, and he's assuming he's going to be in Dayton, and I don't think he's wrong with that. I don't think they're going to send him back to Billings or to the new Greenville affiliate. I think the Dayton is definitely going to be the first stop for him. It's just a matter of when. So we'll see how that plays out. I'm expecting him to not be in Dayton in April playing. Now the question is, is he going to be in Dayton, quote unquote, not playing, but hanging out with the team in the dugout, going through the workouts, the drills, all of that, but not actually pitching on the or in the rotation. Well, it seems like Andrew in the chat is ahead of me because he said Brandon Dixon just hit an absolute bomb, and yeah, Brandon Dixon has not stepped to the plate yet on my little screen here. I don't have cable. I have Sling TV, so I'm streaming the game through the internet, and Brandon Dixon has not stepped to the plate yet. I'm about a minute and a half behind. Yeah. See, Brandon Dixon's just now stepping to the plate. Guy has not thrown the pitch yet. So, spoiler alert, and I love everybody's reaction. The pitcher immediately dropped his head, and the left fielder didn't even run after the ball. For some reason, the center fielder decided to run after the ball, but I'm pretty sure Brandon Dixon just hit that ball 480 feet. Let's see. I need to tweet about that. Let's see here. Now, that ball might have gone more than 480 feet. They just showed the replay. It was 380 feet to the fence that he hit it, the angle that he hit it to over the fence. That ball went so much beyond. Oh my gosh, Andrew, you were not kidding. Did anybody actually like I said, I had the sound muted. Did they actually give an estimate on how far that baseball went? Because yeah, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to Google Maps that one a little bit later. Oh gosh, what's the longest home run I've seen hit in person? Oh, Andrew, I've got Willie Mopena in batting practice. This was, oh gosh, this had to be like 12 years ago or so. They don't open up the gates until 6 o'clock on game days usually. I can't remember why, but it was probably like a bobblehead night or something. And they opened the gates a little bit early, and Willie Mopena was in the last group of batting practice, and he hit a baseball off of, if you've been to Great American Ballpark before, they've got the big video board up there now. It was, before they had the full-on video board, though, they had, advertising signage on the far left side of it if you're looking at it from home plate. So, in the left center field gap there. Willie Mopena hit a ball in batting practice off of the signage on the scoreboard, probably 3/4 of the way up the first, the bottom row of signage. So it was probably 15 feet up the scoreboard to the farthest part of the scoreboard. I mean, it just... Vladimir Ballantyne, who was with the Reds for one season, hit a baseball in a game to this. It was the second to top row, basically in the same area. I mean, the second to top row in the upper deck, and they measured that out at 498 feet. Willie Mo's ball went, I don't know. I mean, it was. I mean, I don't remember the exact trajectory of the ball, but it had to go at least 40 feet further than that. So, I mean, that is easily the furthest home run I've ever seen hit in person. Now, the one that Adam Dunn hit that landed, well, it left the stadium and then bounced into the river. They measured that one at 535. And so it wouldn't surprise me if they were kind of that same distance there. But I didn't see that one in person. The one Willie Mopena hit, I mean, batting practice, so whether that counts or not, I don't know. I saw, oh man, I've seen a few guys hit them before the Reds put the boat over the center field production studio thing. A few guys hit them in person over that, and those generally measured out to 475, 485, depending on exactly where they went. I believe Bill Hall did it once. Um, Reggie Abercrombie, of all people, did it once. Sammy Sosa did it once when I was there. So those are probably the longest I've seen in-game home runs. Um, Longest minor league home runs I've seen in person. That's a tougher one. I saw a guy in Dayton, and it was an opposing player, so I can't remember who it was. He hit one out onto the street in left field. That was just, I mean, it almost hit the building beyond this, like beyond the stadium. I think it landed on the sidewalk and then bounced into the building. And it was pretty much the furthest that it could go without hitting the scoreboard and still make it out onto the street. So it was, I mean, it was a shot. I don't have an exact distance on it, but it was a good one. I'll say that much. Live Long Gaming said Chad Dotson is the GOAT. I love Chad, I do, but he is not the GOAT. Chad actually has a book coming out soon. If you're not following him on Twitter, well, one, you should be. But he just got the author's copies of his book that he's co-authoring or did co-author with Chris Garber, who I'm not sure if he still writes for Red Leg Nation or not, but he at the very least he used to write for Red Leg Nation. And basically, it's a book on the Big Red Machine. I'm looking forward to it. And Chad, if you're watching, I actually do want a signed copy of that, so we're going to make that happen. But yeah, let's see. Most fun Reds minor leaguer to take or to watch take batting practice. Oh man, probably Aquino. I mean, he can just absolutely crush the ball. Jose Siri's fun to watch as well, but Aquino's just got. I mean, he gets into a ball, man, and it just goes. Let's see, and Cleveland just smacked a solo home run. That was an Arizona home run special. That ball's not leaving the ballpark in regular season unless you're playing maybe in Wrigley when the wind's blowing out. That was a wall scraper in the thin air. The most impressive opposing minor league player I've seen in the past. When I go and I scout baseball games, the way I do it is I think about the best player I've seen at that level. And or not even necessarily at that level, just in general. And the guy that I pretty much try and stack everybody up to is Carlos Correa. I saw him play one game. It was the Midwest League All-Star Game of all things, when Dayton hosted it a couple years ago. And I mean, he was just on a different level than other guys talent-wise. And I mean, I'm sure that's not too surprising to everybody because, well, you know, look at what he's doing now at such a young age. But I mean, just tools-wise, he stood out. Physically, he stood out, and he was just 18 at the time when I saw him. And so he's the guy that stands out to me as far as like this guy's better than everybody else. Last year, I saw Vladimir Guerrero Jr. play for a couple days in a row up in Dayton. As far as hitters go, he's probably the best hitter I've seen come through any of the towns that I've been in to watch minor league games. Best pitcher I've seen, I'll be honest. Robert Stevenson, when he came through Dayton, I still wonder what happened with him control wise, because when he was in Dayton, he did not have control problems. Right now when you watch him pitch, it's the fastball that causes his control problems. And when he was in Dayton that second time, as a 20-year-old, I mean, he was literally painting the black with a 96 to 99 mile per hour fastball almost every time he went out there. He's a different guy today than he was back then. But man, when he was going through Dayton that second time, I mean, it was just it was a different kind of thing. As a starting pitcher, I mean, it was just wow. It really was. So those are kind of the guys that really stood out to me. Unfortunately, Mike Trout played in the Midwest League while I was covering the Midwest League, but his team played in the other division, and they don't always travel to Dayton. And by the time that they got into Dayton, he had already been promoted. So I didn't get to see him when he was in the minor leagues, unfortunately. Last year, I missed Ronald Acuna of the Atlanta Braves by 1 day. I was in Pensacola looking at the Blue Wahoos, and his team came through, and they promoted him the night before. I was so mad. I was looking forward to it so much. And I didn't plan it around seeing Ronald Acuna, but the few weeks leading up to it, I knew that I was going to be there, and I saw them on the schedule, and I was really excited. And they promoted him the day before, so I did not get to see him. Arguably, he's the number one prospect in baseball this year, depending on who you ask. But again, I might have seen the other guy who's the number one prospect in baseball in Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So I'm not really complaining, but I'm complaining a little bit. I would really like to have seen Ronald Acuna come through. Let's see. Do you think Cody Reed can find his control, or is he destined to be a loogie type from the bullpen? I do think that he can find his control, but I think that, well, let me put it this way. I don't think that he should be evaluated in terms of where he should go to start the year by his spring training. While he did show improvements last year in Louisville versus what he showed in the major leagues last year, I still would like to see him do more before he gets a chance to pitch in the big leagues again. Now, I'm not going to write him off. I think that he's got outstanding stuff. We've seen in the past, or at least I have, because I watched him pitch in the minor leagues for quite a bit before he did get called up 2 years ago in the major leagues, that he's got control when he's got control when he's on top of his game. Now, he's been working on his mechanics over the past year and a half, and it hasn't gone as well as you would hope. But I think that all the pieces are there, so I'm not ready to write him off, but I definitely want to see more from him before I put him back in the major leagues. Doug, I saw you in Dayton last year. I think I was there I want to say 14 times last year. I'm hoping to get there more this year. It just all depends on how the rest of my schedule goes. But Dayton's usually the place where I wind up the most. It's the easiest drive. I can usually get there in 55 minutes from my house. And so, I don't need to really go out of my way necessarily to travel up and see Dayton play. Louisville's a little bit tougher. That's about an hour and 45 minutes drive each way. So I pick and choose a little bit with Louisville based on one, who's pitching that day, who's coming into town, because sometimes I do want to see the other guys play a little bit more, because I can always see the guys in the Reds organization play. So when you've got big prospects coming through Dayton or Louisville, I'll try and make a trip to see the top end guys from other organizations. But hopefully I'm going to be doing a lot more traveling this year. That's the plan right now. Greenville, I think that's like a 4-hour drive, so I can do. I definitely, it's not like a 1-day thing or whatever, but I can definitely plan a trip around them and stay there for a couple of days and see the guys that are going to be coming through there, which don't really know who it's going to be right now. Half the team's probably going to be made up of draft picks from this year, and the other half's going to be made up of guys that were in Arizona last year. So, but I'm glad that we're getting another team, and that they're going to be close enough for me to make a reasonable trip too. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, to be able to get to Billings this year for the first time. That's a 2-day drive each way, so that really sucks. That makes it a lot more difficult to get to, because that's 2 extra nights in a hotel that don't involve me actually seeing baseball. A lot of gas, a lot of time of me not working while just driving. So my trip out to spring training in Arizona, it's the same thing. It's 2 14-hour day driving, staying overnight somewhere, so that's hotels, and then me literally just not getting any work done whatsoever until I get to the hotel after driving for 14 hours. So those things suck. And for those who don't know, I don't fly because I'm a crazy person, and I'm just deathly terrified of crashing in a plane, so I just don't get on them. But hopefully do lots more traveling this year, but I guess we'll just kind of have to play that one by ear and see how it plays out. But that's the plan. Fastest guy in the organization outside of Hamilton, probably Jose Siri. He's a legit 70 runner. There's a few other guys. I'm drawing a blank right now. I can see him. Played in Billings last year. Why am I not thinking of his name? I gotta look it up. Give me a second here, guys. Totally my fault, but let me see here. Where is my list? Where is my list? Scrolling. And my list is not on this computer, it's on the other one, and I'm not going over there to get it right now. I want to say it was Andy Sigilio, but I don't hold me to that one just yet. Dang on it. I'm so frustrated with myself right now because I'm drawing a blank on this one. Let me see here. I know I wrote about it, so I'm just trying to find it right quick here. If you can hear my mouse scrolling, I'm sorry. It's right underneath the microphone right now. So hopefully it's not too loud. I'll move it over here. I can scroll from this angle. Still have to reach up here and click this, but let's see. What did I? Was it Sigilio? Yes, it was Sigilio. Okay, so right here I've got it. I was able to get a home to first time from him from the left side at 3.87 seconds. That's not Billy. That's just a little bit off of what Billy Hamilton runs. That goes down as plus. That's 80 speed at the top of the charts. Some guys go beyond the top of the chart, like Billy Hamilton, Byron Buxton. They're both a little bit faster than that, but you're probably not going to find too many guys that are breaking the chart. And Sigilio's at the very top right there. So he'd be another guy that I'd put up there. He's probably faster than Jose Siri is, to be perfectly honest with you. So let's go with him and then Jose Siri as the top two guys. All right. Wow, we've been going for a while now. This is what? An hour and a half. All right. Well, what do we got? This Stuart Turner at the plate. Okay. I don't know how far ahead of me some of you guys are. As I said, I'm streaming the game through Sling. I love not paying so much for my cable bill, doing the whole streaming internet thing. But man, it sucks for sports, especially for somebody like me who hangs out on Twitter while also watching sports, because you get spoilers. You really do, because you're a minute and a half behind everybody else who has cable or satellite or listening on the radio. So that part really sucks. But yeah, it's probably worth saving the $40 a month. So let's see if there's anything else going on Twitter right now. Did we ever get an actual distance estimation on that ball by Brandon Dixon? I'm going to look it up on Twitter and see. We did not get an estimated distance on that home run yet, at least according to Twitter. I don't know if they said anything on the game or not. Is anybody listening? Wasn't Mason Williams a fairly big prospect of the Yankees? Yes, he was. But that's kind of the thing. Prospects don't always work out that way, and that's actually I'm gonna close up the whole Reds minor league talk today with this one. The Reds are in the rebuild mode, and we see a lot of teams in this whole rebuild mode situation right now. And you need to tank in order to get the high draft picks, and and when it works, it works. You look at the Astros. They were able to get guys in the top of the draft. Carlos Correa is a game changer for them. But you see the Cubs. They got Chris Bryant. They got to a lesser extent they got Kyle Schwarber, who I think that he's. What people say about Kyle Schwarber versus what he's actually done on the field is that they don't really line up just yet. That's not to say they won't one day, but I think that right now he's overrated based on how people talk about him. But prospects don't always work out. Mark Appel was the #1 overall draft pick by the Houston Astros, by the way. And I mean, it's just he just retired from baseball this past year. He never made it to the major leagues, and I mean, he was a guy who dominated at a big time college, and I mean, it just the stuff just didn't quite pan out. The whole building around prospecting. It again, like I said, it's nice when it works, but not everybody makes it. That's why it's important to have so much depth. I mean, pitchers get hurt. That's one thing. Pitchers get hurt, and sometimes they don't come back, and sometimes they do come back. But they're a year and a half, 2 years behind schedule of what you thought they were going to be because they miss time, and it takes time to come back, even once you are quote unquote healthy, because you're working off that rust in a lot of cases. But I mean, even the top position guys don't always work out. I'm not really coming up with a good recent example of a guy who was considered to be a top 20, 25 prospect in all of baseball that hasn't really panned out, but I'm sure that there are some. I'm just drawing a blank on them right now. And so that's one of the things that it does make me worry a little bit about with where the Reds are and what they're doing is, well, I'm a believer in a lot of the guys that they do have. Things just, they don't always work out as you plan, and I think that with how valued young, controllable players are right now, that maybe the next market efficiency is trading those guys away for proven major leaguers. I'm not saying that I think the Reds should go down that road right now, but I'm not saying they shouldn't either. I wouldn't trade a guy like Nick Senzel or Hunter Greene right now. There's no way. Senzel is too close to the major leagues, and there's a chance that he could fill an enormous area of need at shortstop for the organization. Even if he can't, I think that he can fill the need at second base. Not necessarily a need at second base right now, but I think that he could be the best option for second base regardless of how anybody else plays. And then Hunter Greene, the upside is just too it's too big for Hunter Greene right now for me to even consider trading him for anybody that would be traded. The Angels come calling and say, hey, we'll trade you Mike Trout for him, sure, but they're not going to do that. So I'm talking more realistic trades. I wouldn't move him. There's not enough coming back the other way in a realistic situation in my mind that I would trade Hunter Greene away right now. But the Reds are very deep, pretty much 1 through 25. I think that they've got more depth than most teams in baseball. So if that's a route that they went, I wouldn't be upset about it. I think that it could make a lot of sense, assuming that they were able to get the finances to work. And that's part of the other problem is if you do trade for quote-unquote proven major league talent, it costs money. Even if you're getting guys that haven't hit free agency yet, if they're in arbitration, they're making millions of dollars a year. And depending on how good they are, we might be talking $10 million a year. So it's not always cheap, but it's not an area where I'd be surprised if we saw some teams start to exploit that and trade that younger talent away before it gets to the major leagues for more short-term but proven major league assets. Guys that still have 2 years left on their deals, and try and build their team up a little bit that way more so than just hoarding tons of young talent and hoping that it all works out. But all right, guys, we've been going for quite a while now. I'm gonna cut this off and just kind of focus on the game a little bit and then write up a little bit after the game. So thanks for tuning in, and I will see you guys next time.